Thanks for joining me on episode 564 of the Inspired Stewardship Podcast.
This is Wendy Gentry from Baker University. I encourage you to live your life from the inside out. And one way to be inspired to do that is to listen to this, the Inspired Stewardship Podcast with my friend, Scott Mater.
One thing that's important is that you consistently move forward and take action too. We don't get drive by sitting and thinking about doing something. It actually comes from the doing. You've heard me say before that action creates belief rather than belief creating action. And this is true here too.
Welcome and thank you for joining us on the Inspired Stewardship Podcast. If you truly desire to become the person who God wants you to be, then you must learn to use your time, your talent, and your treasures for your true calling. In the Inspired Stewardship Podcast, you will learn to invest in yourself, invest in others, and develop your influence so that you can impact the world.
In today's episode about investing in others through stewarding your talent, I talk with you about why your drive is something that you can actually build, why your drive may have an ebb and a flow to it, and how to build upon your drive if you find that it's low.
You've heard me talk about developing your talent, and one of the best ways to do that is through books. But if you're like most people today, it's hard to find the time to read. And that's why today's podcast is brought to you by Audible. Go to inspiredstewardship.com/audible to sign up, and you can get a 30-day free trial. There's over 180,000 titles to choose from, and you can pick one and listen your way to developing your talents via Audible. That's inspiredstewardship.com/audible to get your free trial and listen to great books the same way you're listening to this podcast.
Let's talk about drive. That's one of those terms that you'll hear people talk about, whether or not they have a drive to do something or whether others are driven. And yet we don't ever really think about where drive comes from. I think we treat it as one of those things that, some people have it, some people don't. You're either driven or you're not. It's something that we're born with in some way. And that's not really true. Drive is actually something that you can work on. It's something that you can build or you can develop. It's something that you can help both for yourself and for others, help people have more of it if you understand where drive comes from and what it is. And the truth is that drive is one of those things that it ebbs and flows. There are days and there are tasks that you may be less driven about, and there are days and there are tasks that you may be more driven about. And that is part of the key to understanding how drive works and where it comes from, is recognizing the fact that there are ebbs and flows to your drive. The real truth is your drive comes not from some sort of inherent talent or ability or something that you're born with and you either got it or you don't, but instead it comes with the things that you surround yourself with. At a very high level, it comes from a combination of your personal habits and environment, your work habits and environment, and then the actual kind of interpersonal mindset levels of commitment that you or others have. And so if you look at it, you can actually kind of examine all three of those areas together to work on your drive and your motivation. When you think about your personal habits, are you doing things to give yourself enough sleep? Are you eating well? Are you getting up and creating routines and systems around yourself so that things are taken care of? Are you getting the work done at home and the chores that need to be done? Have you created a habit and a routine around your life that allows you to get the rest you need, the food you need, the sleep you need, and all of those other things so that you have the energy and the ability to actually put energy towards things that aren't just survival? Have you gotten your finances in order? Have you gotten your systems in order around your productivity and your way of capturing task? If you haven't done those things, then you need to work on your personal habits. And similarly, if you look at your work habits, you've got the same sort of idea. Are you able to create a system and process around your work so that it is able to be done and paid attention to, and that you capture the right task? You're not losing track of things and constantly feeling like you're behind the eight ball. And if you haven't done that, then these are two areas that you can work on first. But the third, that area of commitment and mindset, that's actually the most important area to work on. The truth is, your mindset controls more about your drive than anything else around you. Creating those systems and processes in your personal habits and your work habits allows you to free up the time and energy to pay attention to your mindset. So they're important too. But the mindset is where the rubber hits the road. That's where your drive really comes from. So have you done things like examined and found your why and connected those to deeper values and purposes that are bigger than you? It can't just be about making money or feeding your family. Those are tremendous values and very important. But what else is going on? What else are you feeling? Where else is your push coming from? Are you trying to just do something? Or are you trying to master something? Are you trying to create something that's bigger than you? Sometimes you can shift your why too. You can recognize the fact that, well, right now the why is just putting food on the table, but that's a temporary thing. And later I'll be able to do things that are bigger than that. And you can shift your why to relight your fire and drive you forward towards that bigger goal. You can step back and look at how you're doing work. Are you just going through the motions, or are you actually trying to do the work really well? And you can tune in to how you feel about these things. One area, and I'm very analytical, one area that most of us don't spend enough time on is reflecting on how things make us feel and getting in touch with those things that give us energy and give us good feelings, and finding out what is behind that. What are the things that are causing that to give me the energy and give me the drive? Because often if you can get in touch with those feelings, you can begin to push your drive even in other areas. One thing that's important is that you consistently move forward and take action too. We don't get drive by sitting and thinking about doing something. It actually comes from the doing. You've heard me say before that action creates belief rather than belief creating action. And this is true here too. If you want to be a driven person, then that comes out of acting as a driven person. Remember, too, you've heard me talk about using the framing of what you choose to do rather than what you had to do or must do or even should do. Choice is a powerful tool for drive, and recognize the fact that you do have the power of choice. Sometimes it's the power to choose between several bad choices, but it doesn't matter. You still have the power of choice, and that power is important. Make sure that you're looking at the things that you are really good at, the things that you can do better than others, and do as much of that as you can. Now, don't get me wrong. You can't always only do the work that you love and the work that gives you energy. The truth is that there's always going to be a certain amount of stuff that you have to do that isn't fun, that isn't energizing. But if you can find those things that do give you energy, you can often begin to outsource or delegate or replace or remove things that don't. Not completely, but to a large extent. But most of us don't even pay attention to it, so we don't have the opportunity to do that. So if you or the people around you are not as driven as you think they should be, take a step back. Look at your personal habits, look at your work habits, But more importantly, look at your mindset and your commitment and re-examine what you're doing so that you and others can create drive for themselves and move forward towards their calling. Thanks for listening.
Thanks so much for listening to the Inspired Stewardship podcast. As a subscriber and listener, we challenge you to not just sit back and passively listen, but act on what you've heard and find a way to live your calling. If you like this episode on the stewardship of talent, you can go over to inspiredstewardship.com/talent and sign up for our 5-week series on the stewardship of talent. Or if you're in the U.S., you can text 44222 talent tips. That's talent tips to 44222 and get those tips. Until next time, invest your time, your talent, and your treasures. Develop your influence and impact the world.